Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. You are listening to the Daily Dose Sports Podcast, and I am your host, Clint Daly, coming to you from the Mile High City here in Denver, Colorado. And we are back for another week of talking sports with a dose of common sense. Yes, happy Wednesday to you. I hope that your week is going well. I hope that you, your family, your friends, everyone in your world is staying strong and you are staying healthy right now. And yes, we are back.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years.
You know, we took one of the biggest breaks from doing live weekly podcasts that we have ever taken in nearly 10 years of doing the Daily Dose Sports Podcast. But you know what? It was for a very good reason. Because after over 20 years of living in the same house in the Southeast Denver metro area, we packed up. We moved about 60 miles, I guess, north of Denver. Now, we moved from a city of about 400,000 people to a town of probably around 10,000 people. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm loving it. I love the small town. I love the less traffic and the less noise. And the fact that when I walk outside at night, I can actually see stars. And I won't lie, it's been an adjustment. The weather up here is at least a little bit different. It's not massively different, but it's a little bit different. And of course, the small town means we have a pretty constant police presence in the town. But you know what? I don't worry about someone breaking into our house. I'm not worried about someone cutting the catalytic converter off of my car. So yeah, I'll be honest, I'm liking it. But like I said, during this time, we took more time off from the podcast than we have taken in nearly 10 years of doing the show. We took like 6 weeks and we played some flashback clips and we did kind of some reflecting. I reflected on the podcast and honestly where it is going and what it is doing. And I came up with a few different thoughts and I spoke to a few different people that I trust and that I've listened to for years. And I've actually come to a few conclusions. You know, we have been doing the Daily Dose now for going on 10 years this December. We've covered a lot of ground. And you know, I did notice I still do like doing the podcast. But also there are times that I feel like maybe less might be a little bit more. So you may notice we may have less, let's say, filler on the podcast. I'm going to aim to have a much tighter, much quicker format. Maybe not me speaking fast. I know I do that as it is. But what I want to do is I want to get in, hit the subjects that we want to hit, and I want to get out. And as a result, I think you're going to enjoy the Daily Dose much more. You know, we had an hour format because we at one time had an hour radio show, but we don't have to do that now. We can make it 30 minutes. Make it 35 minutes, 40 minutes. But it doesn't have to be 60 minutes if I don't have the material to make 60 minutes. And on weeks that I have guests stop by where an hour feels more comfortable, yeah, we probably will have a little bit more of a special week that week and more of an hour format. But on weeks when it's just me, I don't know, I feel like it would be better to trim it down. Make it tighter, make it a little more compact. And the key is I think you're going to enjoy it way more. So I will say this to you if you are a listener. Thanks for sticking with us. And now, let's get ready to dig back into the craziness that is our sports world because as usual, there is always something happening in the world of sports. Hey, today on the show, like I said, we have been out for a few weeks and in that time, we have seen the sports world lose their collective minds as they tend to do. So we are going to be hitting some of the biggest stories of the past weeks and discussing them and why the sports media world, as usual, is getting it so wrong. It's just what they tend to do. Plus, we will have a Daily Dose Top 5 for you today. Of course, the 2024 NBA Draft was a week or so ago. And here's my question. How many players did you actually know? Yeah, me neither. We might have to discuss that in our Daily Dose Top 5. But first, like I said, I want to jump into some of the biggest stories that we've kind of missed here at the Dose and some of the overreactions that we have seen by the sports media world. Because over the past month or so, I know it is a very slow time of year in the world of sports. But we have had a few big stories taking place. The NBA title was won. The Stanley Cup was handed out. The NBA draft took place. And I don't know if you knew this, but a new Beverly Hills Cop movie came out on Netflix.
You're not gonna fall for the banana in the tailpipe?
Now, were any of these things any good? No, not really. But you know what? They all brought from the sports media world, as usual, massive overreactions. So right now, let's take a brief look back at a few of these stories, and then let's laugh at a few of the overreactions that we've already witnessed. Of course, let's start off in the NBA, where the Boston Celtics rolled to the NBA title in just 5 games over the Dallas Mavericks to win their first NBA title since 2008. And hey, they made it look pretty easy. In fact, the Celtics went 16-3 in the postseason. That is one of the most dominant runs in playoff history. So, of course, the sports media world immediately asked the question, are the 2024 Boston Celtics one of the greatest in Boston history or even in NBA history? Well, in the world of sports, we can't just look at the victors, because we also have to look at their opponents. I mean, Muhammad Ali beating up on, say, Doug Jones or Charlie Powell, that doesn't make him one of the greatest, does it? No, I would think beating Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, those do much more for his credibility. So when we look back at these Boston Celtics, I just have one very simple question. Who did they beat? Well, they beat a very average Miami Heat team. They beat a very average Cleveland Cavaliers team. They beat a very average Indiana Pacers team. And then in the finals, they beat a very banged up Dallas Mavericks team. Hey, the Celtics don't have to apologize for who they beat. But let's slow down on comparing them to Larry Bird's era, because they didn't have those Magic Johnson Lakers to play against and beat. They kind of didn't really beat anyone. And again, I'm not mad at them. They dominated like they should have. Are they one of the greatest of all time? No, they're not. Because they didn't beat anyone. Let's see how this next season goes. And I know they will probably be the favorites going into this next year. I would imagine the Philadelphia 76ers will be a favorite as well because of their free agent signings, as long as you believe that Paul George is playoff P. But I mean, none of us really believe that, do we? So let's stay in the NBA. And let's move over to those Los Angeles Lakers, where the Lakers have been making some very interesting moves so far in the offseason. First, they made a run at Connecticut head coach Dan Hurley to become their new head coach. Hurley said no, and on Monday, he actually signed an extended deal to stay with Connecticut. Kind of weird. Then the Lakers went out and they hired former Duke and NBA player J.J. Redick to take the job instead. Now, Redick's head coaching experience consists of, I think, coaching his kid's 4th grade team or something. So how in the world did he get the job? Well, JJ did do a podcast with LeBron James. So I guess there's that. Hey, maybe he can finally be a guy that LeBron likes. So maybe JJ Redick is going to be fine in LA. He does get along with LeBron. That has to count for something, right? So the media told us this might be a big advantage for JJ Redick. And I mean, I guess it could be. JJ's not a dumb guy. He played for Mike Krzyzewski at Duke, and for a number of years, he played in the NBA. But since when does LeBron like anyone who tells him what to do? Paul Silas, Mike Brown, Eric Spoelstra, Tyronn Lue, Frank Vogel, Darvin Ham, they all tried to coach LeBron, and LeBron wouldn't really take coaching from any of them. In fact, you could make a case LeBron didn't even like any of them. He kind of set out to embarrass them. Come to think of it, LeBron doesn't really like anyone but himself. So why would JJ Redick be any different? He probably won't. Also, why do the Lakers keep doing things like this? Why do they run their franchise like they're a little mom and pop restaurant instead of like this massive chain? I don't get it. Also, they are mortgaging their future to keep LeBron happy, but they don't seem to be getting much bang for their LeBron buck, which doesn't make much sense to me. But the Lakers were done because then they went out in the NBA draft and they selected Tennessee scorer Dalton Knecht in the first round. And then in the second round, the Lakers selected LeBron's son, Bronny. Hey, according to many, again, in the sports media world, the Lakers might be starting to build for the future instead of just building for the present. That would be a change. They haven't been doing that. Yeah, but I don't really believe it. Because LeBron did also take a max deal, and while he only took $104 million, I think he gave him like a $2 million cut. That's a lot of money. The Lakers still can't really do much in their way of free agency. They haven't really signed anyone. And you know, the Bronny James pick, it's literally a waste. Oh, I know. So many second round picks do not turn out, and I get that. But this one doesn't really even seem to have a chance to work out. And I know there are those in the sports media world saying, you know, this was actually a good move for Bronny. But remember, he actually comes from money. And also that his game needs a ton of work. So why did he need to make the jump now? Why not stay in college for another year or 2 or 7? Okay, but who cares? That's his problem, right? Again, why do the Lakers operate this way? Why don't they demand excellence? I have no idea, but they don't. Also, either Bronny will go to the G League or he will be a towel boy because I've now seen him play a little bit in the preseason. He's not even close to being ready for the league. And Dalton Knecht is probably never going to get a shot on this selfish team. The Los Angeles Lakers have not improved as a team at all, and they are still going to be a team that will be hard-pressed to make the playoffs in the Western Conference. But I guess they are at least keeping Daddy LeBron happy, right? If that means anything. I'm not sure if it does. Let's move over to the NHL, where we saw a very entertaining Stanley Cup playoff yet again. You know, while the NBA, honestly, really wasn't that entertaining in the postseason, oh, the NHL was. Do you realize the NHL had 4 Game 7s and another 6 different series that went to 6 games? Once again, the NHL postseason was not a little better than the NBA. It was far better than the NBA. And you know, that seems to be the norm these days. Right now, it seems like the NHL and Major League Baseball are beating the NBA in the postseason. So the Stanley Cup playoffs were very entertaining. And then in the final, well, it didn't look like it was going to go so good. Because the Florida Panthers jumped on the Edmonton Oilers and were up 3-0. Hey, this is going to be a sweep. This is over. However, the Edmonton Oilers clawed their way back from down 3-0 to force a Game 7 before ultimately falling to the Panthers in that Game 7 by a score of 2-1. Hey, like I said, it was a thoroughly entertaining postseason that once again saw the country of Canada, well, come up a little short, like they do every year. Okay, so Florida wins the cup, but maybe the biggest story was the play of Edmonton Oilers center Connor McDavid. Dude racked up 42 points in the postseason alone. He had 11 points against Florida, and he led the Oilers back from the dead to somehow make a Game 7. In fact, after Game 7, in a game Edmonton lost, Connor McDavid was awarded the Conn Smythe Trophy as the most valuable player of the postseason. He was just the 6th player from the losing team to get the award, only the 2nd forward to do so. He was the first losing player to win it since back in 2003. So, of course, the sports media, in all their infinite wisdom, had to ask, Is Connor McDavid now the GOAT? Hey, Wayne Gretzky even says he wouldn't be the same today with all the young talent that's out now. There are so many good young skaters, so many good young goaltenders. Wayne Gretzky even says he wouldn't rack up the points now that he did in his day. And yet, this still feels like an overreaction. Because can we see if Connor McDavid wins one title first? Can we see if he actually scores more, than I do in a big game 7? Because right now, not happening. Can he score 1,000 points before we say he is better than the guy that scored nearly 3,000 points? Why do sports fans have to have nothing but recency bias? Like, we can't just say Patrick Mahomes is very good. No, he's the best ever. Really? Already? LeBron can't be very, very good. He has to be better than Jordan. Hey, he's the GOAT. I don't care. Physically, he's just better. He's just a lot better. Really? It can't just be, hey, he's really good. Let's go ahead and wait and see how his career ends up, and then we'll make that decision. Just thinking about this, we might have to talk more about this phenomenon a little bit later, and maybe even a little bit more in the next week or so. Finally, we saw the United States men's national soccer team collapse and lose again in the Copa American tournament just a little over a week ago. Hey, the Americans always seem to have some expectations. They have some talent, but they never do anything on the national stage. And the sports media world couldn't help themselves. When Team USA lost, they told us how head coach Greg Berhalter has to be fired because Team USA had lost 1-0 to Uruguay. And this team really needs to be rebuilt so that they can actually live up to their potential. Now, I'll be honest here. I have no idea if Greg Berhalter should be fired or not. But I know this. I don't care. And no one cares. Americans still don't care about soccer. This isn't the Olympics. This isn't the Gold Cup. This was Copa. Americans literally didn't even know Copa was happening until we lost at Copa. Don't try to tell us to rebuild the U.S. men's national team. We have no idea who's even on it. Who in the world do you think you're kidding? Okay, coming back like we talked about, the 2024 NBA draft took place a couple of weeks ago. And let's just say this, it wasn't exactly a star-studded event. But here's my question for you. Was it the worst ever? Now, as we do so many weeks here at the Daily Dose, we need to get to our Daily Dose top 5. The Atlanta Hawks selected Zachary Risacher out of France with the first selection of the 2024 NBA draft. Now, that name probably doesn't ring any bells, does it? Okay. Well, then the Wizards took Alex Sarr at number 2. Still nothing? Yeah. It wasn't a great draft class. There weren't many household names. Now, will the 2024 draft class end up being a solid class? I don't know. I guess it could. But I don't see much star power, even if these players do reach their full potential, which we know usually they do not. But was it the worst draft class ever in the NBA? Well, we'll see. But there have been some really, really bad draft classes. And, I find this interesting, and I know comparing eras is difficult. But for as often as we hear the modern athlete is so much better, and so much better, and so much better, and so much better, why don't the draft classes seem like they're getting so much better? A little bit odd. I don't know. Maybe you just can't put together a career. I'm not sure what it is. But there have been some really, really bad draft classes, and you're going to notice a lot of them are more recent. Is that a coincidence? I'm not so sure. But today, our Daily Dose Top 5 is counting down the top 5 worst NBA draft classes of all time. And I'm telling you, we've got some bad ones. Let's start off at number 5. And we go back to the year 2014. Now, this group actually looked pretty promising early, but the shine has really worn off in recent years. If you don't remember 2014, the Cleveland Cavaliers had the top pick, and they used it on Kansas Jayhawks swingman Andrew Wiggins. Well, Wiggins shows some flashes. He was good that 1 year with Golden State, right? But he's never really found any true consistency. Injured a lot, doesn't always play hard, isn't always great. He kind of sums up this class. Milwaukee selected Duke's Jabari Parker at number 2. Well, we know Parker has had problems with injury, never developed an outside shot. Now, Joel Embiid was at number 3, and he is an MVP threat when healthy, but he never is truly healthy, and he's probably one of the best 2 players in this entire class. Aaron Gordon is a solid player. Marcus Smart, decent. But guys like Elfrid Payton, Doug McDermott, TJ Warren, not so great. The only other All-Stars in this class were Julius Randle, who was taken out of Kentucky at number 7. And we know he needed a few years to kind of find his game, and he still has a lot of injury concerns. And again, consistency is a problem. And also Zach LaVine, who maybe was a little bit of a steal at pick 13. However, the late first round and second round did have a few value picks. Specifically, a young kid that was drafted by Denver at pick 41 by the name of Nikola Jokic. Now, of course, Jokic is on a Hall of Fame pace. He may go down as one of the greatest steals in NBA draft history. But you really only came out of this draft with 3 decent players. For the most part, this class was a group that looked great at the time, but they've turned out to be very much ado over very, very little. The 2014 NBA draft class comes in today on our list at number 5. We move next to number 4, and we go back to the year 2006. Now, the 2006 lottery, if you just did the lottery picks only, it might be one of the worst in NBA history. Get this. Toronto took Andrea Bargnani at number 1. Who? Yeah, I know. Charlotte selected Adam Morrison at 3. Portland got Tyrese Thomas at 4. Atlanta took Sheldon Williams and his big giant head at 5. Only 5 future All-Stars were taken in the entire draft, none of whom are like Hall of Fame worthy. LaMarcus Aldridge was taken out of Texas at 2, Brandon Roy at 6, but of course we know Brandon Roy was so banged up with injuries, he never reached his full potential. Rajon Rondo went at 21, Kyle Lowry, 24, Paul Millsap, 47, Rudy Gay, JJ Redick. I mean, contributors, nice role players, but superstars? Yeah, 2006 didn't have much at all. And for that reason, 2006 comes in today on our list at number 4. So we move on to number 3 on our list today of worst NBA draft classes in history, and we go back to the year 2002. Now, this was the year, remember, that preceded the arrival of LeBron James. But 2002, it wasn't a whole lot to write home about. There were a few exceptions, but not great. Now, the Houston Rockets crushed their top pick. They had the number 1 pick, and they took a guy by the name of Yao Ming. Now, Yao Ming was an all-star in each of his 8 seasons, but he did have a number of injuries, and he retired from the league at just the age of 30. Phoenix got Amari Stoudemire at number 9. The Miami Heat got Caron Butler at 10. And Cleveland probably got the steal of the draft at number 35 with Duke's Carlos Boozer. But check out this lottery. Mike Dunleavy Jr. at number 3. Drew Gooden, 4. Nene Hilario at 7. Decent careers, but not stars. Jay Williams was taken at 2, but his career was cut short by that motorcycle crash. Outside of that, it wasn't very good. Tayshaun Prince was a sometime starter with the Pistons. Matt Barnes was in the league. I don't know. Hey, some seasons the talent is a little light. In 2002 was one of those seasons, and it comes in today at number 3. So we arrive at number 2. And the class of 2013 is sometimes cited as the weakest draft class ever. And while it's true that it's noticeably light on top talent, when we look back now, we actually see that 2013 had some role players that had to kind of find their roles. And it took them a while, but once they did, it kind of makes 2013 at least a little bit better than you might remember. Of course, we all remember the Cleveland Cavaliers. Again, notice that trend of they pick every year. They took UNLV's Anthony Bennett at number 1. Undoubtedly, huge disappointment. But almost every player taken after that is at least still in the league or playing some, did play a little. Shabazz Muhammad at number 14, terrible. Okay. But Victor Oladipo at 2, not bad. The only real all-star was Giannis Antetokounmpo, who was taken at number 15 by Milwaukee. Rudy Gobert was taken at 27. And then we have a bunch of just role players. Otto Porter taken at 3. Cody Zeller at 4. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at 8. Trey Burke at 9. CJ McCollum at 10. You see what I mean? Steven Adams, 12. Mason Plumlee, 22. Tim Hardaway Jr., 24. Again, the 2013 draft class is no one's idea of a dream team. Not very good, and especially didn't have top talent. It is still a terrible draft class, but it did provide some role players. They have developed a little bit in recent years. So the 2013 draft class comes in on top of a lot of people's list for worst draft class ever, but I'm actually going to place it at number 2. Which brings us to our number 1 entry on our worst NBA draft class of all time. Now, some of you might remember all the hype and all the worry that people had around Y2K. A lot of people were backing up canned goods and water and getting guns. We weren't sure what Y2K was going to bring, but it turned out to be a lot over nothing. Well, the 2000 NBA draft class, it was very similar. Because of the entire class, only 3 all-stars came out of this class. One of them was Ohio State's Michael Redd, and he didn't go to the middle of the second round. The others, Cincinnati's Kenya Martin, who went number 1 in this draft, and Kentucky's Jamal McGlory at 19, they only went to the All-Star game once each. The rest of the lottery, it's a bunch of guys who were way overhyped and never did anything. Stromile Swift, Darius Miles, Marcus Fizer, DeMar Johnson, Chris Mim, Joel Prisbilla, Keon Dooling, Courtney Alexander, Mateen Cleaves. Now remember, Mateen Cleaves had won a national title and a Final Four. He was the most outstanding player of the tournament with Michigan State. And yet, the class of 2000's best player by a large margin is a guy who is actually remembered for coming off the bench in the NBA. As Michigan's Jamal Crawford did that for most of his NBA career. And that kind of sums up the 2000 draft class. Hey, the class of 2024 might turn out to at least be respectable, but I have a feeling it might end up having more in common with some of the classes on this list today than with any of their great classes. I just don't see much star power. And the kids that were in this draft class, they are really going to have to develop and grow as players because they don't look like players to me just yet. Hey, next week on The Dose, I actually have something a little bit different for you. You know how we were just talking about the modern era always believes they have the greatest athletes and the greatest teams and nothing is close to even being comparable? Well, we are going to do our best to compare them anyway. So be sure you tune in next week and be sure you let a friend know to do the same because it's going to be something different that we haven't done here on the Daily Dose. Hey, I want to say thank you to each and every one of you for listening to the Daily Dose every week. Thank you for sticking with us during this brief hiatus that we took. Thank you for the emails. Thank you for the texts. Thank you for the tweets. Thank you for stopping by dailydosesports.com, where we do still sometimes put up some articles. We put up links to the podcast, and we will have a couple of things that we are putting up there. So make sure you're checking in there every week. But more than anything, I want to thank you for sharing the show, for sharing the videos, for sharing the articles when we do post them. We absolutely love it when you do that. Have to say thank you to JSP. Could not do any of this without you. I will see you all next Wednesday. Have a great week, everybody.
You're not gonna fall for the banana in the tailpipe?